Welcome to Daily Dose of Theological German. We are on installment number 4 of the theology of the cult theology of the letter to the Hebrews. In case you're wondering, these are compound words here. Briefe, meaning letter, or even the English word brief, but that usually sounds more official when you're referring to a letter as a brief. Maybe dossier. No, that's not quite right. Anyway, the point is, it's a compound word. Letter to the Hebrews. And cult theology, also a compound word, as I've been translating it. This is all very straightforward, though, and you're probably wondering, why is he going on about this suddenly? Well, the thing is, it's another easy sentence today. I do promise, though. I promise. The hard one's coming. Don't worry about that. So, before the individual interpretation, the thematic connections in which Hebrews 10:22 stands are to be observed or taken into consideration. Okay, there are a couple of things going on here. You saw me jumping all over the place to get that translation to flow, and that's because of a couple of issues here. First of all, this prepositional phrase is somewhat displaced, but you can see, actually I shouldn't say prepositional, it's kind of a relative clause, but in which, and you can see that it's plural, and so you know it goes together with these thematic connections, and so it just in English flows better to actually put it with the noun that it's modifying. And so you have that. The other thing you have here is a zu construction, and oftentimes when you have a sein verb, as you do up here, with the zu construction, you sort of have to put it into a passive voice in order to get it to work properly in English, and so that's why I said are to be observed or to be taken into account. So in German, it's actually an active verb, but in order for it to flow properly in English, you have to make it passive. And finally, I just want to point out that you do have a couple of compound words here, and so let me just get rid of a couple of these red marks off the screen. It's getting a little chaotic. And the compound words are this one here and this one here. If you look up Zusammenhänge in the dictionary, and yes, I am aware how amazing my German pronunciation is, so please do leave comments about that. If you look it up in the dictionary, you will see that it could mean something like context or connection. And you might think context, because that obviously is relevant to textual analysis and biblical studies. But it's hard to understand why it would be plural and why it would be modified as thematic. And so I think thematic connections actually will make more sense, and you'll see in tomorrow's sentence that gives you some more context for not taking this word to mean context. But in any case, it's a compound word, and you can see here that it means essentially to hang together, which is the idea of a connection. And so that's why I think I want to translate it that way. The other one here is a little bit tricky. You might think with this compound word, and you try to start pulling it apart, and you might think, well, I've got ein there, so let's take that off. And then you're thinking, okay, so now I'm just left with Zelaus. And you know what? If you try to look that up in the dictionary, Zelauslegung, it doesn't exist because that's not a word. And that would be because you've actually split this incorrectly if you did that. But it would be an easy mistake to make because you see ein and you just think one, and then you try to start working with what's left. What you actually need to do is start at the end, and that's usually when you're dealing with compound words, the best move is to try to find the word at the end and then work your way back from there. And so I'm going to actually go from the end and say Auslegung, because I know that that means interpretation, although that is also a compound word, which you might wouldnly say something like to lay out, but you can see how semantically that becomes interpret. So interpretation is that half of the word, and now you're left with Einzel, and you can look that up in the dictionary, and you'll see that it would be used, for instance, in reference to a tennis match. If you had a singles tennis match, as opposed to doubles, you would say Einzel, and so of course it is the idea of one, but it's more the idea of single or individual, and so that's the best way to think about it here. You're talking about an individual interpretation of this verse 10:22. But before you can do that, you have to take into account its thematic connections. And so that's what this author, that's what Gebel is about to do. So I hope you found that helpful. As always, thank you for watching, and do like and subscribe. And okay, I've been teasing for several days now about how this series is going to start getting more difficult, and I promise you tomorrow, buckle up, set aside some time, because we will definitely be onto a difficult long German sentence. So be sure you have ample time to do it. Also, if you're still listening at this point, good on you. Very nice.